Hello. Big news this week. An old Portland startup, a startup that's been around Portland for a while, has suddenly reemerged with an interesting new hire that I want to talk about. That's the big story. But first, before we get into that, of course, the big story around tech around the world is OpenAI released GPT-5. Now, I'm not going to bore you with details about that you could get elsewhere, but I would like to let you know that there's a great person here in our community named AJ Green who does daily AI newsletters, does weekly AI roundups. He'll have all the details about GPT-5, everything you need to know. I will link up his newsletter so you can subscribe and stay up to date on all the amazing happenings in AI, so that you will know exactly what you can do with GPT-5 and why everybody is so excited about it. One more thing before we get into the big story. We've got this database of all these interesting people in the Oregon startup community. You should be part of it. If you're not already in there, you definitely should be in there. So if you want to meet with more folks from the Oregon startup community, add your profile. Maybe I'll highlight it. Maybe I'll write it up on the blog. At the very least, when people are searching through the database and filtering through the database, you'll pop up there. So, maybe you'll meet some new people because you put yourself out there and shared your profile with the Oregon Startup Database, just like Kuang Truong. Kuang is a co-founder of Urban Form. Urban Form uses AI and GIS technologies to automate the process of acquiring zoning and development information for architects, builders, developers, and municipalities. Kuang is a licensed architect, published author, and adjunct professor. He writes articles about innovation in architecture, has published a book about advanced material technology, and teaches graduate courses at Portland State University. He has also given talks and lectures internationally. Previously, Kuang worked as a lead architect and project manager for large interdisciplinary teams at world-renowned firms. He built complex structures using innovative technologies like the Broad Museum in Los Angeles, the 157 skyscraper in Manhattan, and the world's first FRP structured residence. So super interesting learning about these people in our community. Please reach out to Kuang if it would be interesting for you to connect with him, and please take the opportunity to submit your profile to the database so that maybe I can feature you in an upcoming show. The big news this week is a startup that's been around for a very long time has kind of resurfaced in a new way, and part of that is because of a new hire that they've made recently. The company is Telligence, which was one of the very first companies that Portland Seed Fund invested in their first fund. They were also one of the first companies that Rogue Venture Partners invested in with their first fund. So very early in this kind of last generation of startups. And the most interesting thing to me is how thoughtful and insightful they were about what they were doing and the work they do is really not sentiment analysis, but really just overall analysis of social media, trends, behaviors, the way people want to interact with certain brands. So really a wholesale approach to understanding how humans communicate with social media and how brands can potentially take advantage of that to have more authentic conversations from a marketing and advertising standpoint. And the way they were doing that analysis back then was kind of difficult for them to explain to people. And even I was like, I kind of get what you're doing, but I don't quite understand it. Well, fast forward to today, and the way Telligence can explain what they're doing is much more widely understood. And of course, it's AI. They've been doing AI since 2011, but back then it wasn't a widely held concept or understanding in the industry. So it was more challenging for people to kind of grasp what they were working on. But they've continued to work on this space, refining the way they do things, so much so that companies like Google and YouTube use their product to have a better understanding of the audiences that they serve. So it was really nice to see them featured in the story by Malia Spencer at the Portland Business Journal this week. I encourage you to read it. The other aspect of it that was super helpful is somebody who's been a longtime member and super helpful mentor and connector in our community, Dylan Boyd, had said he was working in kind of a stealthy way with a startup. He didn't really reveal a lot of details. The other nice thing about the story is it does in fact confirm that Dylan is working at Telligence. I know he's been an advisor for them over the years, so it's really nice to see him, get more involved. It's so nice to have another startup I can list off when people ask me about recognizable Portland startups, especially when they have clients like Google and YouTube. So if you're interested in Telligence and the work they do, I will go ahead and link that up. I highly suggest you check them out. And of course, I'll keep you up to date on all the latest news coming out of Telligence. I know some of you pay attention to this recap every week because you're building a startup yourself. Maybe you're doing it solo, maybe you have a team. But whatever the case, you're working really hard to bring something to fruition. Sometimes it can be a challenge to get the word out about what you're building. But I'm happy to report there are 2 upcoming opportunities you have to apply, but 2 upcoming opportunities that give you the potential to get on stage, a big stage, and tell people what you're working on. First off, of course, is Bend Venture Conference. Applications for Bend Venture Conference are due next week. You got to get those in. BVC itself happens October 16th and 17th, so you have a little time to prepare your pitch if you're selected, but get your application in. If you are an early stage company, they are only accepting early stage companies from Oregon this year. If you're a growth stage company from outside the state, you're still welcome to apply. I think they're accepting those types of companies for the growth stage, but if you're early stage, it'll be all Oregon companies. So get that application in before the deadline. Hopefully you get selected, and then you wind up on stage at the largest angel conference in the Pacific Northwest, and then people would definitely be talking about your product. And if that stage doesn't feel quite big enough for you, you might want to consider South by Southwest Pitch. Now, South by Southwest, huge annual gathering down in Austin, Texas. It's been going for years and years. Originally started as a music festival, and then they added on interactive, which became kind of the startup version of South by Southwest, and film and education and all these other components. But for the longest time, and I've worked on it for more than a decade now, they've had a program called South by Southwest Pitch, which gives you the opportunity to pitch your startup to tens of thousands of people in attendance at South by Southwest, and potentially win some prizes and accolades and recognition and media coverage and all those kind of things as well on a global stage. Now, this is a global competition. Applications come in from all over the world, but I think what you're working on has a chance. And if you go right now and get your application in, you also get in on early bird pricing for the registration fee. So for both those competitions, they both have application fees, but both those application fees, if you're not selected, can be applied to ticket prices. So you're not losing the money by paying the application fee. It goes toward something, or you wind up on stage and everybody gets to see what you're working on. So again, Bend Venture Conference next week. Get that in. South by Southwest, you've still got a little time, but if you want to get the early bird pricing on the application fee, you want to get it in as quickly as possible. I believe those are due mid-September. And I will remind you a couple times again about South by, but I won't have the time to remind you about BVC. So this is your last reminder for me in this format. Maybe I'll write something up on the blog, but this is the last time I'll get to remind you about BVC. I'll be down at BVC. Hope to see you there. Because I help with South by Southwest Pitch, I often travel down to South by, so I might see you down there if you're selected. In any case, I hope to see your application come through as I'm helping with judging and selecting the companies that go through the program. But both of those, either of those, are great opportunities for you to get your startup on a big stage in front of a lot of people and really tell the world what you're building. So I encourage you to apply. And then finally, quiet, summer, as we've talked about, is kind of quiet, but summer is also a good time to go whitewater rafting. And that's why this startup makes sense. I found a new startup this week. They reached out to me called Rally Crew. And Rally Crew is really designed to help people who are whitewater enthusiasts find other folks that they can go kayaking with, rafting with, paddling with, really for just the whitewater community. And I don't know, I just really like this idea of really concentrated communities. Like, it's not looking to be massive billions and billions of people, but it's looking to solve an issue that's being experienced by a specific community and looking to provide them a platform to help resolve those issues and get that community more connected. And it's really nice to see that happening in Oregon. I was just talking to somebody the other day who had just gone on a whitewater trip in Oregon. So it really hit home given the timing of the announcement. So if you're into whitewater, even as a hobbyist, even if you're not, gung-ho hardcore whitewater, you might want to check out Rally Crew and find some more folks to get on the water with. Okay. It's everybody else has left. It's just you and me. So I thought I'd let you in on a few things that I'm working on, a few secrets behind the scenes, just because you were willing to kind of stay and hang out. And I appreciate you for doing that. Thanks for doing that. So this week got to talk to quite a few founders and a few investors about things they were working on. Nothing I can really reveal at this point, just some really compelling product ideas that focused on kind of interesting target markets, and they seem to be timing what they're doing really well. And that's always the hardest part about this whole thing, is just kind of like timing stuff the right way. I mean, for so many startups, it's all about timing. So it's always nice to hear when founders are pursuing something where the timing seems to be right. I got the chance to catch up with Robin Bishop down in Bend. She's part of White Summers, the legal firm, and it was good catching up with her about Bend and what's going on down there. And we were kind of doing some pre-planning for maybe meeting up during BBC. Got to hang out with Michael Pan from Pan's Mushroom Jerky. Michael was a alum of the Built Oregon Accelerator that I used to help with. He was also on Shark Tank. So it was good to catch up with him and see what's going on with Pan's. And actually, it was the first time that I had the opportunity to kind of walk through their new production facility. So that was super interesting and really difficult to get a hairnet on my beard. But that was great. It was great to catch up with Michael as well. Always good to catch up with him. And then, of course, this week, August 7th is Silicon Florist's birthday. It's when I started. It's not when I started the blog. It's when I registered the URL. Because if you don't know the story, I basically sat up in bed one night at like 2 a.m. and I was like, why isn't there a blog? Why doesn't TechCrunch write about Portland stuff? Why isn't there a Portland blog? And so I went to search for a URL that I could purchase. And I was like, oh, I should just call it Silicon Forest. And I discovered that that was the name of Mike Rogoway's blog at the Oregonian that had been registered for that. Mike Rogoway and I went to college together. We were in the same class at college. And so that was odd and weird. But Silicon Forest was taken. But I was like, hey, it's the Rose City and Silicon Forest. Why don't I just call it Silicon Florist? And lo and behold, Silicon Florist was available. Go figure. So I bought that URL and then wrestled with WordPress for a couple days and then published my first post, I think, on August 9th, 2007. So that means it's Silicon Florist's 18th birthday. I've been doing this for 18 years. Not the YouTube, obviously, but writing that blog day in and day out, 18 years, trying to help people understand what's happening in Portland, trying to highlight founders who are doing interesting things, just trying to, be a cheerleader and help hype up the people who are taking the risk to build products and startups and those kind of things here in Portland. And I've been doing it practically every weekday since then for 18 years. The blog is old enough to vote. So you know me, I'm always about like celebrate the small wins. So like this was a small win for me, getting to kind of celebrate the fact that something I started on a whim in 2007 continues to be a thing that just brings me joy in the fact that I get to write about all of the amazing people here in town, whether they're building companies or organizing events or like gathering community and building community, creating co-working spaces, whatever. Like, it's just truly been an honor and a privilege to be able to document the journey of the community. And I think another aspect of it is, especially right now, it feels more important than ever, because as I say, and you can potentially read in the post, like right now to me feels very much like 1995 or like 2005. And by that, I mean there are interesting pockets of stuff happening here and there, but there's not like a cohesive community momentum kind of going. There's just random pockets of stuff. And I think at those times, it's most important to be telling the stories of what's happening in those random pockets so that people can find one another, so the community can coalesce and hopefully find common ground and momentum together so that it benefits the community as a whole. So super excited to be continuing to write Silicon Florist in what will be the 19th year of working on that thing. And of course, bringing it back to here, I've really enjoyed building this channel. I mean, it's been going for almost 2 years now. We're getting ready to hit episode 100 here pretty soon. And I just appreciate you being here and you showing up and you listening to these stories of these amazing founders and what they're building, listening to stories about Portland and the broader Oregon startup community. I enjoy doing it, but it wouldn't be the same without you here. So thank you. Appreciate you being here. If you're building something, keep going. I appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to highlighting what you're building. Hang in there, and until we get the chance to chat again, please keep up the good work.